Welcome to Sports Legends of Delaware County Museum. I might want to say it's our virtual museum now, since because of the coronavirus and Governor's Wolf's dictates, we're closed for the time being, but we're very happy that Mainline TV, Mainline Network, is giving us the opportunity to continue with our virtual museum at our website, which is delcosportsmuseum.org. And you can see I have my baseball cap, my Washington Senators baseball cap. Actually, it's an autographed Mickey Vernon Washington Senators baseball cap. So which means we're going to be talking baseball. And we're going to be talking baseball as far as Delaware County and its connection to Shy Park / Connie Mack Stadium. So I guess, Rich, what we're talking about here really applies more to the old timers in the audience that frequented either Shy Park or Connie Mack Stadium. I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to go there or not, but I certainly did.
Yeah, definitely I did. And I guess in the early 60s, I was about 7, 8 years old, and it was the first time that I had gone, yeah.
And did you enjoy your experiences going there?
Without a doubt. And you sat there and watched the game, and there was no playground to go to. Yeah, it was very enjoyable. You got your hot dog and your soda, and you stood up for the 7th inning stretch. But other than that, you pretty much watched the game.
And not only that, but the first game that you went to, walking inside that stadium.
Well, the green grass.
The green grass
was spectacular. I'd never seen anything like that before. That's the first thing that really hit your eyes, you know.
So what we decided to do was that we did some research on how far back Delaware County connection with Shy Park, which was the original name of Connie Mack Stadium. Shy Park, I think, was 1909 is when they played their first game, named after the owner, Scheib.
Ben Scheib, yeah.
And then I guess around 53, thereabouts, the name was changed. After Connie Mack retired, it was changed to Connie Mack Stadium. But it's the same place. Exactly the same place. When the Phillies and the A's were both playing, when one was away, the other one played at Connie Mack Stadium or Shy Park / Connie Mack Stadium. There was a game there every single solitary day.
Yeah.
That had to be a unique experience for the people that lived in that area.
And then the A's left in 55, 54?
54, I think, was their last year. 1955, they went to Kansas City. And just a year or two prior to that, they renamed the Connie Mack Stadium in honor of Connie Mack.
But I do always remember my father saying, the wrong team left Philadelphia. It was interesting.
I remember that well because the Philadelphia A's, they won quite a few world championships.
Right.
Now, we just got through publishing our Tales from the Museum book, a collaborative anthology, and this took place 20 years. You know, everything that we did in the previous 20 years was in this book, and we're turning the page, and starting this September, hopefully the coronavirus problem is done and gone with by that time, we're going to have a celebration at our museum commemorating the 50th anniversary of the last game played at Connie Mack Stadium. So it's going to be a big celebration, so we're all anxiously looking forward to that. So Rich, you and I decided that we would do some research on some of the players from Delaware County or associated with Delaware County that played there.
Yeah.
And the first one that we came up with was a Bris Lord.
Yeah, Bris Lord, who I guess, well, I always like to mention Tom Berry, who is really the first one that we were able to come up with, who actually served or fought in the Civil War, and he was from Leeperville, which is now an area called Crumlin, but back then it was called Leeperville, and which is a section of Ridley Township. And Tom Berry served in the Civil War, and then later played for the A's, an A's team in, I guess it would have been about 1870.
Yeah, actually 1869.
69, so it was about 4 years after the Civil War.
But he certainly played during the Civil War, I'm sure. Baseball was alive and well. Matter of fact, there's a book that we have in our museum library called Baseball in Blue and Gray that talks about, they have pictures in here of Abraham Lincoln, you know, with his baseball attire on and caricatures playing baseball. So Tom Berry was the first professional athlete that we could trace from Delaware County. And it's kind of interesting. We have an article when Tom Berry died in 1915, and I think most people, if they saw this in the paper today, they'd be quite upset about the way they described that. But when Tom Berry passed away, the headline said, "Tom Berry strikes out."
Yeah, I don't think that would be politically correct today.
Not politically correct. One of the things that we do have is Tom Berry's a death certificate. And this is where we get the proof of the Civil War experience and him being the first and foremost professional athlete from Delaware County.
Right.
But having said that, since Shibe Park did not open until 1909, he did not actually play there.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so that's why we're jumping over to Bris Lord.
Yeah, I guess he was the first one to play at 1910. We have that date because he, you may know a little more about that than I do, about the trade, how he came to be a Philadelphia A.
Well, I do know that he was traded even up for Shoeless Joe Jackson. And those of us that watched the movie...
Yes, 8 Men Out.
No, well, 8 Men Out and as well as Field of Dreams with no Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Exactly.
Shoeless Joe Jackson, one of the greatest players of all time, was banned as a result of the 8 Man Out in 1919. But in 1910, he was playing for the Cleveland Indians, or excuse me, Bris Lord was playing for the Cleveland Indians. Home Run Baker was playing for the Philadelphia A's, and Connie Mack, for some reason, did not appreciate Shoeless Joe Jackson, and they traded. So here you have Bris Lord, whose house that he lived in is still in Upland. There's a field in Upland called the Bris Lord Field, and I often wonder how many people drive by that field, have no idea who the heck Bris Lord was. And so we're educating you a little bit. Bris Lord was a baseball player who was traded even up for Shoeless Joe Jackson. He played on a couple
World Series teams, Outstanding player. I'm not sure, but we couldn't find any research of whether he actually went to Chester High School, but because a lot of athletes back then didn't even finish high school, you know, so he may have dropped out at some point out of school.
Yeah, I know. We talked about that before. Where did Bris Lord go to? Where did he go to school? We don't even know if they ever went to any school. Some of these individuals. We're going back in the early 1900s. So after Bris Lord, we have Home Run Baker. Now, Home Run Baker's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. A friend of the museum, Barry Sparks, wrote a book on Frank Home Run Baker. And most of the information that we get relative to Home Run Baker being associated with Delaware County comes from that book. So actually, Home Run Baker played for a Delco League team.
Right, but he had been playing for the Philadelphia A's, and I guess he felt as though Connie Mack wasn't paying him enough. 1911,
1912, and 1913, he led the American League in home runs.
Yeah, and you remember the most he had in the
probably
12?
10, 11, 12. Yeah, they didn't have it. We have a model of his bat, very thick-handled bat. When you see these thick-handled bats, you just don't associate home run hitters with that.
Right.
It was a different style, dead ball era. But he was given the name Home Run Baker because I think he hit 2 home runs in one of the World Series games.
Yeah.
So to decide that's how
it wasn't that he had, well, maybe at that time 12 home runs in a season was outstanding. You know? I
know when he went to the Delco League in 1915, he also led the Delco League in home runs, and he hit 9. So he had 9 home runs in the Delco, but the season was a lot shorter, naturally.
And then when he was done with the Delco League, then Connie Mack dealt him to the Yankees?
Yeah, he played for the Yankees. And then he came back again and played in the Delco League while he was with the Yankees. So the Delaware County Baseball League, which this year, God willing, will be celebrating its 113th season, the early history of that league, I mean, just with these two, Bris Lord and Home Run Baker, is unbelievable. Then we go on to Chief Bender. Chief Bender's another Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
That mostly is associated with Connie, Mack, and Shy Park. But he played in the Delco League. One of the best newspaper articles that we have, courtesy of Kyle Barrett, who's an historian for the Delaware County Baseball League, is from 1917 when Chief Bender pitched for Upland against the Chester team, and he was defeated. And he was defeated by a Chester team that actually had Johnny Ogden playing for it. And we'll get to Johnny Ogden next.
Yeah, actually he's next. Yeah.
He's next, but he's in the lineup. In the Upland team, Bris Lord was in the lineup. So you have all these ex-major leaguers, or actually current major league. Chief Bender was actually a current major leaguer in 1917, pitching for Upland after the season was over.
In the Delco League.
In the Delco League. And the winning pitcher for Chester was a guy by the name of Oscar Turo from Cuba, which strikes me as amazing. You know, when you think about the Hispanic heritage in Major League Baseball, here we are, 1917, you have a gentleman named Oscar Turo, who's a former Major League player. You know, this is 1917. If you look up the records, you'll see in 1918, 19, or 1919, 1920, he's pitching in the Major Leagues. So it's just a tremendous documented article. We're very big on, and Rich is, when he does his articles, you want to make sure you're passing on the right information. Not that a mistake isn't made every now and then.
Right.
But we like to be able to document everything that we say. And that's a little proof here, that box score that Kyle Barrett provided for us.
That's outstanding.
It is outstanding. And then we have Johnny Ogden next.
Now, he is a Chester High graduate.
He's a Chester High graduate.
Yeah, he, because I have pictures of him on the Chester High team with his brother, Curly Ogden. But John Ogden, you know, was, again, a Major League baseball player, I guess for the New York Giants, and then went and played in the International League, too, with the Baltimore Orioles. But he also played in the Delco League. I don't know how many years he played. He played for the Chester team, though, not the Upland team.
Yeah, he was. Well, let's see. Yeah. We'll look at the lineup here. In the lineup, he was with the Chester team, and he played first base. Although he's known as a pitcher. This game he played first base, but he's known as a pitcher.
Yeah.
And he's also known as the scout who signed
Richie Allen.
Richie Allen.
Dick Allen.
So and these are players that, again, have a relationship with Shy Park / Connie Mack Stadium that have Delaware County roots. And one of the things you talked about him playing for Chester High, you have a team picture.
Yes.
From 1915.
Yeah.
Of Johnny Ogden, along with his brother Curly Ogden on that team. Johnny Ogden was I think Johnny Ogden was a senior and Curly Ogden was a sophomore at that
they were about 2 years.
time.
And don't forget, I think they both, I know John Ogden played at Swarthmore College, too.
I think they both played there.
They both played there. And so they were college graduates, too, not just
and at that
high
time,
school graduates.
That, matter of fact, go back to Shoeless Joe Jackson. That's one of the things that Connie Mack had against Shoeless Joe Jackson. He didn't think he had enough education.
Right.
You know,
right.
So here you have Johnny Ogden and Curly Ogden. Curly Ogden is unique in that he actually was the starting pitcher 1924 World Series 7th game. So he was the starting pitcher of the 7th game of that 1924 World Series. And the Washington, appropriately enough, I have this cap on, they didn't win another World Series until last year.
Right.
1924 to 2019 is a long time to go without a World Series championship.
And in that World Series in 1924, he's playing for Washington, and playing for the New York Giants was Hack Wilson, who's another who will be coming up on our list.
Coming up very shortly, as a matter of fact. So you have John and Curly Ogden. And this is one of the reasons why we do these shows, is that we're trying to reach out to the audience that have experience with some of these individuals. Because somebody came to me, and I tell you the truth, I was negligent and I didn't get his name, address. He talked about how he had Curly Ogden as a substitute teacher at Chichester High School. So these are the types of stories that we're looking for because it makes Delaware County special. All these individuals make Delaware County special. And this book that we wrote, okay, 50 contributing authors have these behind-the-scenes stories that are just, you can't find anywhere else.
You can't find them anywhere else, really, except that book.
So, and now we go to Jimmy Dykes.
Yeah, Jimmy Dykes.
You know a lot about Jimmy Dykes.
Yeah, he was a Haverford High School graduate, and Jimmy Dykes is interesting because when it comes to playing and managing, he played in the major leagues for over 20 years, and he managed for over 20 years. But he played in the first 2 All-Star games. Didn't he have just as many hits as Babe Ruth did in
the
that
first All-Star game? There was
game?
Only 2 individuals that got more than one
hit, and it was Babe Ruth and Jimmy Dykes. Yeah, there's people out there, these so-called baseball experts, that feel as though he should be considered for the Baseball Hall of Fame, Jimmy Dykes.
Well, he had a great career.
Yeah.
As a player, not a real great career as a manager, but he managed for 20 years.
I think he's still. They're saying he's still the only baseball man who managed for over 20 years and played for over 20 years. So
at least the 20th century.
Yeah.
At least from the 1900 on.
Right.
The only one that managed for over 20 years, and
he
still has relatives living in Delaware County. One just finished playing in the Delco League. I think his career about 2 or 3 years ago. As a matter of fact, there's a funny story. I can't remember if it was his daughter that represented him when he got inducted into the Delaware County Athletes Hall of Fame. And she had one of the shortest speeches of all time. Do you remember what she had to say, Rich?
Well, paraphrasing, but it's about time.
Yes, it's about time. I mean, Jimmy Dykes, I know, and you always say it, probably one of the most underrated athletes that we have in Delaware County. He's a World War I veteran, too.
He is a World War I veteran. Jimmy Dykes is, he actually became the manager of the A's, the team that he played for.
He was the first manager
after Connie Mack.
Matter of fact, we have a picture in the book of a signed baseball by Jimmy Dykes.
Yeah.
When he took over for Connie Mack.
Took over for Connie Mack and then managed probably 4 other teams, but never won a pennant or got into the World Series as a manager.
I remember, I think one of the interesting things, we'll finish up Jimmy Dykes, was I believe that the owners, there was 2 baseball teams in the American League, and neither one of them had a great record, and they were looking, how do we get the fan base excited? They couldn't trade all their players, so what they did was they traded managers. Yeah. Jimmy Dykes was traded for another manager whose name escaped me. This is where we need help from the audience.
I had never heard of anything like that before, but I don't know. Was that ever done since then?
I don't think so, but I can see it happening. Yeah. It's not a bad idea, really, because
trade managers.
Let's trade managers. You know, if you don't like the players, then we have George Earnshaw. George Earnshaw, we're cheating a little bit here, but he is a Delaware County player in terms of his higher education.
Yeah, another Swarthmore College graduate.
And he pitched for the Philadelphia A's in at least 3 different World Series.
Yes. Actually, in 29, I guess, and 30, the A's were in back-to-back World Series. So they had Jimmy Dykes from Haverford on that team, George Earnshaw, who played at Swarthmore College, and Lou Krause Senior, who went to Media High School. There were 3 Delaware County players on that World Series team.
And George Earnshaw was not just a run-of-the-mill pitcher. He probably was the leading pitcher in 1929. I think he was the leading pitcher in the American League.
Right.
He was a force to be reckoned with.
We kind of adopt him because he is from New York, but he went to Swarthmore College and he lived, I believe, in
Swarthmore for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
So, and again, what we're talking about now are the people from Delaware County that have an association with Delaware County that also played in Shive Park / Connie Mack Stadium. So he certainly fits. And here now we have Hack Wilson.
Well, Hack Wilson, one of the great players of all time, I guess no more than 5'6". He was from, what's interesting about Hack, the thing he mentions in his book, because he grew up in Eddystone and then Leaperville, he used to stand out on Chester Pike and watch Bris Lord drive by when Bris Lord was playing for the A's. That he said that was my hero. That was the player I really looked up to. And he lived in Delaware County from 1905 till he left for the majors in 21 or 22, Hack Wilson. So he is, and he's really the only baseball player we have in our county who's in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown from our county. But his records are, he was really considered the Babe Ruth of the National League.
Well, he had 56 home runs and 191 RBIs. They found an extra RBI. Somehow these Sabre people, they do all this research. They originally, for years, they said 56 home runs, 190 RBIs, but then somebody found an extra one. And they sort of like ruined the story a little bit because Hack Wilson was 5'6". Right. And weighed 190 pounds. So he hit 56 home runs and had 190 RBI, that record still exists today.
Yeah, so the RBI record, of course the home run record has been broken, but that RBI record, I don't know if it'll ever be broken. But,
that steroid era didn't do it.
I know.
It's hard to believe something else is going to do it. And we don't have any memorabilia from Hack Wilson, unfortunately, but we have a portrait of his done by Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy Rembrandt, yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy Rembrandt, yeah. Jimmy Corcoran from our museum, which is just a magnificent item. And then from Hack Wilson, we go to Lou Krause Senior.
Yeah, who I just mentioned, outstanding baseball player from Media High School, and pitched for the A's. He pitched in 2 World Series for Connie Mack, and of course had a very famous son too, Lou Krause Jr. And you may know, being a Chester High graduate, and Lou Krause Jr. being a Chester High graduate, you may know more about the father than I do.
I knew I consider it an honor that I was able to be friendly with the Krause family.
Yeah. Because
Lou had a younger brother, Dave, that went to Chester High as well. And Lou was one of the, you know how when you say Bris Lord looked up to, or who was it?
Hack Wilson looked up to Bris Lord.
Because he's driving around in the big car.
Yeah.
That's the way we were. When we were younger, when I was in 9th grade, Lou Krause Senior was this. Lou Krause Jr. was a senior in high school, and he signed for $125,000. It was the greatest bonus ever paid anybody. It was sort of like a heroic figure. He was the greatest high school pitcher in the entire country, and he pitched 12 years in the major leagues. And I stay in touch with him periodically. And as a matter of fact, he said that for our event that we're going to have come September, he said that he'll send us one of his Oakland A's jerseys.
A great.
So then we'll have the A's from Philadelphia, and then they moved to Kansas City, what we say 1955, and then they moved to Oakland. And so it'd be nice to have those 3 jerseys on display. So
when he was, but when they signed him, they were in Kansas City though.
Yes.
They weren't in Oakland yet.
And then he moved to Oakland.
But I always found interesting, the first game he pitched in the major leagues, it was a shutout
against California Angels.
Yeah,
it's a great Delaware County story. Yeah. And then we go to Mickey Vernon.
Well,
Mickey Vernon, 1939, played his first game at Shibe Park.
Yes.
So there's a connection there that's irrefutable. It's just a tremendous story of Mickey Vernon. And Mickey Vernon, we have a letter from him that he wrote to somebody said, Mickey, who were your heroes? And his heroes were the Philadelphia A's, not the Philadelphia Phillies, because the A's were the ones that were winning the championship. And then in 1941, we go here to Danny Murtaugh. And we picked the 1941 year because that's the year that Danny Murtaugh actually led the league in stolen bases.
Which maybe he had 18.
Yeah, I know. Mickey Vernon used to kid. He said, "Hey, I had more stolen bases than he had." And he ends up leading the league. And Mickey Vernon and Danny Murtaugh, they played together on the same American Legion team.
Right. And we mentioned that Mickey Vernon is a graduate of Eddystone High School, and of course Danny went to Chester High.
Danny went to Chester High, and then the next person we have on the list is one of the hardest names to spell that we have, Johnny Pagano.
Pagano, yeah.
It's Podjagany. Very difficult.
Strange.
He's another Chester High graduate, and now might be a good time. Well, maybe we'll wait to the next player to talk about the amount of players from Chester High that actually played in the major leagues and played at Connie Mack Stadium or Shibe Park. So Johnny Pagano was also
on the Phillies with Danny Murtaugh.
Yeah, they were teammates. They had a day where all the people from Chester came up there, and it was a Danny Murtaugh, Johnny Pagano.
Right.
And now might be a good time to talk about the service that we might lose players, lose the season. We don't know what this coronavirus is going to do. But these players, they lost time due to World War II.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So it's not like the only time that we had to relinquish a professional sports season.
Yeah.
I mean, Danny Murtaugh served for at least 2 years, possibly 3. Mickey Vernon served for at least 2 years, maybe a partial of 3. Johnny Pagano was also in World War II. So we lose sight of that fact.
Right.
And then the last person we have on the list is Ron Henry. And Ron Henry is special in Delaware County, in the annals of Delaware County sports.
Without
with the
a
2
doubt.
minutes that we have left, Rich, tell us how he's special.
Well, he is, in all the research that we've done, I've done, he's the only African-American from our county to make it to the majors. I couldn't find anyone else.
I mean, when you look at the great athletes in all the other sports, football, basketball, people don't believe that that's the case.
But it is the case.
And we have individuals that have written 26 books that still are scratching their head about that and say, there's got to be somebody else. Well, let us know.
Yeah.
And that individual that we're talking about is Rich Westcott, and the most prolific witer in the history of Delaware County sports.
26 books.
So if anybody's out there can tell us another African American that actually played, not signed, but played in the major leagues, please get in touch with us. We'll have our phone number and our email address on the screen.
And Ron Henry attended what high school?
Chester High.
Chester High again, yeah.
Might be a good time to point out there's 7 players. We just talked about 7 players that went to Chester High that played in the major leagues.
Yeah, Westcott had done some research there and said that he found that Chester High had the most Major League Baseball players of any high school in Pennsylvania. Who knows nationally, I don't know. But, and I think the number was 7, yeah.
Yeah, the one that's not on this list, and we don't have him on here, Tom Chisholm.
Yeah.
Because he did not play in Shibe Park / Connie Mack Stadium. He's the youngest of the group. But another tremendous player from Chester High that played some time with the Baltimore Orioles. As a matter of fact, in the minor leagues, he actually pinched hit for Cal Ripken.
Well,
so that's a pretty good claim to fame.
Yeah.
And I think probably Cal Ripken will. Some of these things, how's he pinch hitting for me? What are they doing?
So we really have it's a great group. I mean, it's a real outstanding group, and I think with this event that we're having coming up in September, it'll be nice to do this 50th anniversary, of the closing. The last game was what, October 1st?
Last game, October 1st, 1970. Our dinner is going to be on the 26th of September, as close as we could get on the weekend. And hopefully there'll be some people looking at our website, and we'll put some information on there on how they can purchase a ticket for this particular event, because we're going to have some of the old ex-Phillies there. So thanks, Rich. Another great job. Hopefully the audience enjoys it, and hopefully we'll get through this coronavirus situation by September 26th at any rate.